on the last point, we've been working, at least with the Main Street depot, the Main Street stop, to get it open. It was open for a couple of days and then it wasn't. And so I'm aware of the email traffic and that we're trying to get it open at 5:30 again.
That's great, because it astonishes me that the places, they're heated, there are people who have
Waiting.
access, and there's and people who want to wait outside the,
Yeah.
from the cold. They can't do that, so, thank you.
Point of insight about Main Street. You have to ring the buzzer to get to the elevator to go down. And that place is heated. And if somebody's bold enough to ring the bell and says, cold out here, can I wait inside? The controls downtown will do it. But there's no promotion to say, if you cold out here, ring this bell and go in the waiting room, in the inside, by the elevator. All they have to put aside is cold, ring the bell.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for those comments. All right, now let's go to our item number 3, the Howard Street parking meters. And Rick is going to tell us about that and how we're going to capture more revenue while providing convenient parking meters. Capturing the revenue from Chicago.
Good evening, Rick Voth, Parking Revenue Manager. Alden Rainey and I were in discussion on changing the hours on the Howard Street meters with the new technology that we have in store. The problem was, and identified many years ago, is that the parking meters on the Evanston side go from 9 to 6 currently, to where the Chicago side goes from 8 to 10. So what happens at 6 at the and I've been informed by staff and others, is that you see the mass exodus from the Chicago parking side, and they transfer all their cars over to the Evanston side, which is now free parking. So what happens in the interim is that people that now want to frequent Ward 8 and other establishments, because we're now building that, but we're working very hard to get that very congested with good businesses, is that now it's being affected. So in conversation with Alderman Rainey, she asked, and she agreed that we program the meters to go from 8 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, and then at 5 o'clock, like many of the downtown around that they go to 4-hour enforcement versus 2-hour. So I need to bring this proposal before the city council because I have to codify it, and then we're asking the parking committee to recommend approval.
So it accommodates the restaurant goers.
It accommodates the restaurant growers, it will accommodate any new venues that are going down there, and it should deter the other side of the street from automatically bailing. Even though our rates may be less, I think that when you find out that they're going to still have to pay, it's...
I was curious why we don't go till 10 to match Chicago, because it would seem like these businesses are ones that would get, later night customers. I don't know if that's an enforcement issue or...
Well, part of it's enforcement issue. Most of the staff, but it's got nothing to do with enforcement. It has to do, we want to stay consistent with what we currently do in the city. And there again, you have to understand, if we go till 9 o'clock, you're still going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. The majority of the people are not going to abandon that parking from across the street. And I think it's better for the customers on our side, that we don't match them exactly.
But that means overall, we don't have a meter anywhere right now that goes until 10 o'clock.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just convention. I mean, so the group could always consider that, but we consistently went from 6 to 9 p.m. as the expansion. It seems to have remedied the situation where we've done it.
I'd just be curious, like downtown, I mean, just to think of other places, are we seeing, high demand after 9 o'clock?
Sure, but then it's free.
No, I know, but it makes sense that if there's high demand that we should price it accordingly.
The CFO will not argue that point.
Particularly when there's so much room in the garage.
Well, I mean, we've been debated, but I think we'd be tarred and feathered if we added the extra hour.
It's like, that's enough. I guess for that extra hour would, I think they have to pay enough for parking downtown, and we always are more, well, it's picked on because we always get tickets, so an extra hour, I don't know if it makes that much money.
Other communities don't. And we're always hearing about that. In other communities, you can go to dinner in Wilmette, you don't have these issues that they have here.
And the reason why we did it downtown partly was because all of those parking spaces filled up with employees of the restaurants and the later venues, and then there was no street parking for the customers at all. So we did it partly to gain revenue, but mostly to create parking spaces. Okay, so you need a resolution from us.
Yes, ma'am, second.
Okay, motion. Would anyone like to make a motion with respect to this Howard Street parking meters?
I think to do it.
To approve?
To prove it, sorry.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Okay, good. Next is, this is an ordinance amendment, Greenwood Street limited parking.
This became an issue and it was brought up to my attention through Alderman Moon. One of the constituents down in, brought up a point that what was happening is it appeared that the one side of the Greenwood and the 4, 5, 3 through basically 500 block wasn't signed appropriately. And it's a split residential district. On the south side of the street, you have a C permit. On the north side of the street, you have a B permit. And it's designed that way purposely. So what had happened is all I'm doing is I went and researched the ordinance. It was supposed to be in the ordinance many, many years ago. However, when the ordinance was written, they quoted the south side twice. So what I'm here, this is strictly to amend the ordinance so the B permit becomes residential on the north side like it's supposed to. And then what will happen is that then we'll reinstall signs because the signs have never been installed. And what will happen on the sign only and not covered by ordinance, we will ensure that the sign is posted that B and C can use both sides to accommodate street cleaning and snow removal, so they can fall in. And that's all it is. It's just
Any debate, questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to recommend the Transportation Parking Committee consider amending portions of the City Code 10-11-12, Schedule X, F1, Residential Exemption Parking District B.
Okay, I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next is Davis Street loading zone discussion.
Well, I'll start the discussion if I passed out a memo at the, my apologies for not having the memo ready at the time that we published the packet, but we had to do some more research on some items. Back in, a couple months ago, as you all know, the North Shore Residence Hotel was being remodeled. And they came to, I think Alderman Fisk may have been involved in some of the conversation, came and asked that after the remodeling is done, that they are requesting an additional loading zone on the Davis Street side to include valet parking.
For the crystal ball.
For the Crystal Ballroom. So we were asked to bring it to the committee for discussion. Public Works and Humayun Peruz and also Rajiv Dahal got together when we took a look at the area and came to, based on that, we came up with a series of recommendations that we don't believe that this warrants an additional loading zone. Upon completion of their project, they will have full access to a drive that's singular to theirs, that they can do loading, unloading, they can run a valet operation from there once they're permitted to do so. What will happen if we take away another 3 spaces off of Davis Street to an area that is already been, due to the redevelopment of Davis Street in the 500 block, has lost valuable parking with a number of restaurants along that street. and now we'd be reducing even, we'd taking more parking away. And then in the addition, and it may have not been in the memo, and I thought about it, is that we do have a brand-new bike lane there. And where the loading zone would be right by the bike lane. And so we're gonna have people pulling in and out. It's different to have somebody come in and park in there and leave their car for 2 hours. Versus the idea of somebody pulling in, coming across the bike lane, opening car doors, pulling out, or having a valet operation. And that was my biggest concern on the bike lane. So it was strictly a consensus that we came together, we developed a report. We recommend that the North Shore resident needs are already met, and there would be no reason to have this additional loading zone. Doesn't mean that for special events, they couldn't come to us and say, we need to take 2 or 3 meters, and like everybody else does, rent the meters for a day or a night due to a special event, so they can provide parking. But to do it on a full-time basis, strictly our recommendation not to.
Is it really here for the North Shore Hotel?
But Homayoun Peruse is here. Lynn, do you want to add anything?
Good evening, I'm Homayoun Peruse, city engineer. Mr. Ross basically covered everything, all the points that we looked at before we wrote this memo and made a recommendation. Again, as you all know, there's a high demand for parking on Davis Street as well, which, and then again, the North Shore Hotel has actually a full-size pull-up driveway that can accommodate the building very well. So that's where we are.
Yes.
Anecdotally, the North Mather building has entrances on both Davis and Hinman. They used the Hinman entrance for about 3 weeks, and then they shut it down because they had to man both of them. And I think you'd find the same thing happening at the North Shore.
Yeah.
They just don't want to spend the money to man both of them. They don't need to.
Yeah. Alderman Fisk?
Yeah, we had a couple of meetings. The first one was about the bike lane. Remember we gathered about that? And because there was loss of parking in the 500 block because of the bike lane, obviously the business owners were very concerned about that. So I think, Ricky, your idea, and I understand the North Shore Hotel Crystal Ballroom is going to be their main entrance to various functions, wedding receptions, other events that they would be having. I can understand that they would want them on a temporary basis. And, you know, perhaps they can add that into the charge that they make for their room. But I would strongly suggest that we talk to them and suggest that. I'd like it to be, rather than us coming down with a hammer on them, I'd rather suggest that that's a way for them to proceed on this, because I don't think we can remove any more parking from that block of the downtown, or frankly, anywhere in the downtown.
Yeah. Well, I also think the conflict with the bike lane, it presents too much of a danger to have.
So you really couldn't do it even if you, on a temporary basis though, with the bike lane? How would you do
Go
that?
ahead, Ricky.
I think we could restrict it to basically what's going to happen, and from what I understand from the information I received from the North Shore Hotel, a lot of it will be a one-time stop. A bus would sit there, let them unload, the bus would stay there. You're not going to see the valet. Any valet operations won't be approved for that location. They have a front entrance for valet operations to where they can move their cars, once they apply for a permit, to a secure parking space, or would probably be either Church Street garage or someplace off-site area or off-street area to park. So that would alleviate any in and out, in and out, in and out. This would be just strictly, if they needed it for an event to provide parking for a bus or something, I think we'd have to limit it to that.
Okay.
I think that makes much more sense. Every space on that block is really precious, and we've had several new restaurants open up, and they're very successful. And now the corner spot is going to be leased at some point. I mean,
It's going to be expanded, actually. They're expanding that to the foot and ankle clinic and the old mid shop. So that's going to be about a 3,000 square foot space.
Okay.
It's going to be large, and it's going to need parking as well.
Yeah. Jerry, did you have a question?
Yeah, so are we talking about when we temporarily do this, the 2 or 3 spaces that are directly just east of Chicago Avenue there, on the corner.
On the north side.
North side
North side of the street. You know, and this might affect, you know, one of my jobs, but I just think that because of the way the lanes are configured now with the new, you know, configuration of the street, I really think that's going to congest it even more if we do it even temporarily for what you're talking about. I thought you were talking about maybe, you know, what you're not talking about is maybe temporarily so that they could have people pull up and then they could take their cars and valet them somewhere else. But I think if you put a bus, you know, even the size of my vehicles in that area, you know, people are already kind of doing illegal things to try and turn, and they're looking while they're driving and they're not really paying attention. And because we've narrowed the lane down and kind of really marked them so that the way that they're supposed to be, we get some crazy drivers over there anyway on a regular basis. And I think if you put a bus there, allow it to park there, I think we're kind of asking for a little bit more of a safety issue.
Would it impact the bikes as well? Is it going to overflow into the bike?
I don't know that it would overflow into the bike lane, but then if you're right at the corner, if you have the two, you know, then you're restricting vision of being able to see. If you're driving up to the corner, you're restricting your vision to be able to see pedestrians who are not necessarily paying attention to the stoplight. You know, and also the bikes that are, you know, that are not paying attention either, that are going the wrong way. I don't know, I just kind of see it, you know, we already have a lot of people that ride bikes that don't do what they're supposed to do in the first place. We have pedestrians that are not necessarily paying attention. We have joggers with earphones and all of that. I kind of see it as more of a safety hazard than we want to deal with. With that size vehicle being parked there for you know particular amount of time, especially with a large group activity going on at the same time that we already have the hustle and bustle of a regular evening in a nice downtown Edison.
Could they park the bus on the outside of that curve? You know what I mean? So I don't think the bus can pull into the...
Where that regular entrance is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually...
No, it could fit underneath, but I don't think.
No, they can't.
It's not.
I don't think so. Usually you have about a 9.5 foot clearance on a vehicle like that, and I don't know that canopy is that tall. I think it might be just...
The canopy's actually falling.
Is it? Okay.
If you can get a full fire rig in there.
Okay.
So I've seen it.
Well, but even though, you know, even if you put it in there, now you're restricting their natural flow of traffic to be, you know, to drop off, pick up and drop off, you know, either valet or whether it's, you know, whether you have elderly, whether you have handicap, you know, whatever. So yeah, I think right outside that island, if that's the way that they're going to still keep it, I don't know if they're going to construct it differently or not, but if they're going to still have that island there, you can safely sit right outside that island.
Right.
In a vehicle that size.
Right.
First Ricky and then David.
When we made this recommendation, it was based on just trying to provide that additional coverage. I understand totally what you're saying. If we were to move them back, there's additional parking to accommodate some special event. Would that help? In other words, we would not limit it to the first 2 or 3 if we could push it back a little bit. It's just strictly a consideration to give them a little bit of...
Or put them further north on Chicago Avenue.
Or put off Chicago Avenue. We can always do that too. So there's ways we can accomplish this, and I agree with you. I know, and taking back as the old traffic and taking a look at it, you're right. It's always been kind of a dangerous corner. So it was just strictly part of the recommendation. So we could at least say that, you know, we looked at it and we kind of give them some additional options. Sure. They didn't feel like we were totally leaving them out of it.
Were they invited to come tonight? Did they know this discussion was occurring?
I could have to double check as an email.
Yeah, because I would push this to you. You would have been here.
But
Because there may be something that, you know, it's not communicated.
David, did you want to say something?
I was just going to recommend, I agree with Jared on the safety issue there, and I was going to suggest that we do what he just said, is to investigate other locations where the impact would not be as great.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so staff has our recommendation. Okay, good. Now, updates?
updates. I love
Sherman
it.
Plaza parking garage?
Sherman Plaza and Marketing Garage. One of the, there was a gentleman that was supposed to be here tonight, but unfortunately he had to decline due to that he had other obligations. I speak with the gentleman all the time. We had a very pleasant conversation. We just covered some basic concerns that he had. And most of them we addressed. He was concerned about the gate issues now at Sherman Plaza because the equipment's getting antiquated. And I told him I developed a request for proposal to have all that stuff replaced within the next, sometime during this fiscal year. So he was satisfied with that, knowing that we're going to move forward with different equipment and upgrade. We also spoke that he had concerns about some of the lighting fixtures go out, which I said, which is standard. I said the contractors coming back in, they're all under warranty and they're being replaced as they go out. And, you know, and one of the deliveries, there was a product defect, so they're coming in and making all the changes. We talked about cleanliness of the decks as a whole. And staff has been directed to make sure that the decks we're past the harsh review. So,
Promise.
well, I won't promise anything.
It's on record now.
Yeah. Have we made the record?
Well, I'm on record, it has to go. That motorcycle in my garage is crying to get out, so it has to come out. Anyway, going back, so the staff has been directed to make sure, you know, we increase our efforts to keep it maintained. The power washing was conducted at the end of the year. We'll do the same thing we do with the decks in the middle of summer. During the summer, we hire seasonal, and we use the youth program to help us go through the decks and wash them and do touch-ups on paints and things like that. So it'll be our normal direction that we will in the parking decks to try to keep them maintaining them. Past that, that was basically all he wanted to bring up. And so there are additional updates on the Sherman Plaza is the elevators were 100% completely finished. They are repaired as of 2 days ago. Everything's done. Cables, everything's been replaced. I'm just waiting for the final invoices and everything to come through on that. So ThyssenKrupp, it took a little while, but they had to make sure it was done correctly. And so once I see the final invoices, you know, or you'll see them on the bid list.
It won't happen again.
I won't guarantee that. You have to hope that it doesn't happen again. A lot of it had to do, unfortunately, with the deep freeze.
Yeah. There's a lot of problems with the freeze.
But that is basically the Sherman update.
Ricky, what's the issue with the gates in Sherman Plaza?
Well, basically, it's with all the equipment. The equipment has reached its useful life span. They're usually around 10 years. Well, remember Sherman went up in 2006, so we're talking 8 years now. And the useful life is, that's about it, with all the stuff. And we have to upgrade anyway to make PCI compliance, or purchase card industry compliance, with all the new information that's coming out. So, and I will add that, I forgot that on an update. We were notified by our vendor that XP would no longer be supported on April 8th.
Who still has the Windows XP?
Therefore, and it would be, so we had to make an emergency purchase of 3 new servers for the parking decks to be installed by April 8th to support Windows 7. Otherwise, any communication coming from the purchase card industry on updates and security updates, we wouldn't be able to get, therefore we'd be in violation, which is tremendous fine. So that's being taken care of. Fortunately, is that these new servers, regardless of who we go with the new vendor, can be used for any new technology that comes in. So that was one of the things that we just did, and I'm just waiting. They've already ordered the equipment, it's already en route. I'm just waiting for some information so I can finish the purchase order. It's all been signed off. So that will help us become PCI compliant. So going back to PCI compliance, there's so much information that's coming out that they're changing all the rules on chip technology, RFID technology, and other mag strip and everything else, is that the equipment's antiquated. They can't do that anymore. So we have to upgrade our equipment to match technologies that are moving forward. The demands are going to be high.
Can you give a timeline for the request for proposal for the replacement of its data park?
I am hoping, against all hopes, that I'm finishing one proposal now for another project. I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks to finish the final draft so I can get it out mid-April. This will be a quick turnaround. The experts in this industry, they have their stuff together. There'll be a quick respond on it, and then we can move forward to get a better price.
So we should be installing the gates middle summer.
I'm looking middle summer. I'd like to get it totally done by November. And that's everything. So that's what we're going for on that. So now I think we're done with Shirley. I think the next.
Just one thing on the, oh, that's sure, sorry, you're going to do parking meters.
How are we doing on the parking meter?
Parking meters, okay.
Is everyone out there using their credit cards?
No. Coins.
You're still using coins?
Glad we did. We need the coin, keep the coin slots. We got the good old coins.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I got your rules to go through, right?
Parking meter installation, as of today. According to my staff, we have installed 1,585 new Liberty parking meters as of today.
Those are the head.
Yeah.
Those are the regular Dunkin', now you can use your credit card or coin parking meters. I will have to say that we have seen an increase from 22% usage when they first were installed. We're averaging about 31% credit card usage now. So people are adjusting to it, you're seeing the credit card usage go up.
So per meter. So
As an average.
For the money put into a given meter.
An average of about 31% credit card usage now.
Jared, let us know when you convert over.
As long as I keep getting change at the store, I'm keep.
Yeah.
All we're waiting for on the last 49 is just some data keys that to be installed, and then my staff is scheduled the week of the 31st through the 4th to install meter poles and hardware on the 500 and 600 block of Davis. So we can finish the installation in those areas. Calais, which is the pay stations for the parking lots, has taken delivery of all the multi-pay stations. They are currently working on programming the data and plans to start installation in parking lots on the week of April 7th. We'll begin in Lot 4, up on 2100 block of Central Street with 2 brand-new Calais stations, one from the original, and we're going to put a second one at the other entrance to ease the things. We've ordered signs for all the pay stations because they now are pay by space in those areas. We used an Evident, that we selected an Evanston firm to produce the signs. So they're working on getting those produced. When they get produced, we'll begin installation in the other Calais stations. The installation, like I said, we'll proceed to swap out the old existing pay stations and parking lots prior to the elimination of parking meters. So we have in Lot 14, underneath Best Western, we have 1. We're putting 2 in there.
Good.
Great.
Lot 10, under the library, you'll get 2 brand new machines. So we're swapping out the old technology for all state-of-the-art technology. I sent a very nice email out to Duncan today. We're going to be using Passport for our cell phone use. They're going to get back with me when they're ready to launch on that. That will be shortly also. So we're going to start an advertising campaign, and we will be able to link everything. And if you want to, be able to pay for your metered parking by cell phone.
Good.
So that will wrap into that system also. So everything's starting to kind of come to a head. We're working on the final pieces.
Is that both meter and pay station?
Oh, you can pay either one.
We had some concerns about somebody heading to the train and not having even the time to stop at the box, so that they can literally they just have to remember their space. And 3 miles down on the train, they can punch in and
Great.
they're rolling the dice a little bit that someone doesn't pull up right after they're gone, but they'll have some flexibility to not even be within anywhere near it and still pay for their space. So
Is that going to be fairly soon?
Well, hopefully they'll roll it out. I'm not going to give any guarantees, but they told me they wanted to get it out as soon as possible. So they're just doing some final,
So is that this
calibration.
year?
This is going to be within 2 months.
They'll be able to pay by phone.
I'm hoping sooner, but 2 months.
Could you say again, you said, oh, that could be June. So when you're saying that you're going to keep the meters there plus the pay boxes?
No.
Oh, I thought you just said that. Okay.
No, you'll be able to pay by your cell phone for both meter
okay.
meter or pay station.
All right, then tell me how many meters will, the boxes will be at lot 4?
8.
8. Because James said 4.
8.
8, okay. Near, because people will go at Lincoln and they go on the south side, has to go the stairs.
We're putting enough pay stations in lot 54,
Okay.
which is the metro station. Putting enough pay stations so as you're walking from Livingston or you're walking from Colfax, you'll have ample opportunity. If you miss one and somebody's there, they speak to each other. So regardless what space number it gets registered, they all talk to each other. So regardless what you do, I'm trying to work out something, no promises. Yeah, trying to work out something to see about getting one up on the platform, and that's a deal with Metro I gotta run. So what will happen, if we can purchase an additional one down the road, if it happens, then we can put one up on the platform. So if you miss everything else, but that's something I have to deal with Metro, and I don't know if I can get permission.
My only thing is, that is a great idea, except no one knows what goes on up there at night in the dark. It'd have to be someplace where you can see it from the street. Because I think it would get trashed.
Yeah.
How's that for a positive attitude?
Put in the heated shelter that's involved.
Yeah.
Put a camera up.
Yeah.
Just a fake
But yeah, I mean, that's
put a
good.
fake camera on it.
Right.
That's,
Yeah, they work just as well sometimes.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
So 8. Okay.
excellent. All right.
I think I have, a little bit more.
Okay, sorry.
So we have the old Duncan meters. We've baxed them up, we shrink wrapped them. Now we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with them. I have a couple ideas that I'm researching. The mechanisms are worth something, not a lot. I mean, they're old. However,
But the scrap metal?
I think I can get more than scrap.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking outside the box. I'm going to go back to the people that manufactured them in the first place, Duncan Technologies. I'm assuming, and it's strictly an assumption, that there's a lot of communities that can't afford the new technology, that have the old Eagles, that could use them. So if I can get a price for refurbishing what they would pay me to refurbish and then even go out, I'm researching that idea, but I have to do. But also, I'm a firm believer in trying to get the most out of, so I've got some other ideas for refurbishing our actual casings for the meter. Might involve kind of a, you do this for me, I'll do this for you, you do this for me. Because it's a very expensive proposition to redo all those housings. So I'm going to work with Duncan and see what we can come up with.
What's the age of our housing?
Pardon me?
How old are our housing?
Our housings are old. I mean, our housings are probably older than the meters, probably 20 years. They're in good shape, they just need to be repainted, brought up, and look nice. So I'm going to try to work with our vendor, who's been very gracious, and so he's been pretty good with and see what I can work out, and see. It's going to be expensive to see if I can offset some of that expense with the meter and see if they need to sub. So that's something that we're looking at.
Sounds like you're working with
I
Catherine.
think people would buy.
Yeah, you're recycling.
I do think people would buy them.
Some people would buy them.
Your own piece of Evanston.
I think people bought the people bought the television lights. I think when they switched out.
But
You
probably
can-
more efficient.
Well, no, you could keep a percentage aside, there's no doubt. You could keep some for that may be interested, it's just, but as a whole, you're talking $2,500 mechanisms. We don't need that many mechanisms.
And then,
I'm sorry, Mary Lou.
Now that we have the new meters in, should we have a discussion about where we extend the hours downtown to 5 to 9?
I that all done, I think that, well, once I get them all in, I think that we need to have a discussion. I also think we have to look forward as to the other districts and how they're being affected by the changes. I take a look at Dempster and Chicago as a prime example, with all the clubs going on there. I mean,
There may be some advantage to doing that.
and the thing is after 6 o'clock, they're doing the same thing they did on Howard Street. They're loading them up with everything, and it's becoming an issue. So I think we have to have an overall discussion, once we get everything on board on changing all the ordinance, because I can make it one, once we sit, one package it all together.
Just one quick thing. When you're talking about, we still have the meters up there to have the numbers on at the train station, when you had to have your parking number that you were going to be
Parking it, yeah.
parking it. And you were talking using the meters themselves, and you'd have the numbers on there.
Oh, the meters will have alphanumeric.
Okay, but what I was thinking-
Using the meter poles.
Right, because you were going to keep
so you
the
can
numbers
see
in the snow.
space number.
Right.
No, the poles are going to stay.
Okay, if you were considering getting rid of the poles, if this all works out, since the whole side there is, Poplar is all brick, why couldn't you paint the numbers? No? Would that be more work?
Well, number one,
Keeping it up?
Number one, it's a metro right away, and we lease that lot. They're not going to let us make any adjustments to that.
Okay.
Well, we can-
All right.
let's ask Metro if they want to let us paint on it. We do want to, if we can, one of our goals for the boxes was cleaning up the streets.
That's, okay.
So let's ask them if they can get us right now.
Or maybe signs. Maybe we could actually find a way to mount the signs on
Oh,
it.
they won't let us.
But I don't know.
We have a comment from the audience.
Well, the
Yes.
city of Chicago left their meter poles up so people could lock their bikes out. I know that can be a hassle in some places,
You're
but
right.
in others, it's a nice
We've
nod.
discussed that a number of times. The goal is not to have the street clutter because it
I respect that.
problems.
Install more parking for bikes.
Yes, that's what the plan is, to do that.
I suppose to try out the new meters by parking in this parking space.
Yeah. Anything else from the committee?
Just on that,
Yes.
when we come back with that report, is there any desire to also have the analysis of differential rates at differential times and locations? So when we have high demand for a special event to have a differential rate. That's one of the...
You mean like airplane seat pricing?
Applied to football events or other, where right now we have, the spaces get filled up for a variety of, whether or not the meters are set to change zone, you can change the time and the rate.
Can you make sure you're only charging non-Evanstonians the higher?
At some point in time, there could be that possibility.
For a wealthier demographic.
But depending on if somebody's putting in a plate number or putting in, this is John Smith. Oh, John, you live in town. Your rate is.
Just put your
That's part of the reasons that we do come up with. So
Use your cell phone.
well, that's the idea. Is that we would.
I think that's worth having a discussion about. If it's high demand, people don't care. Now that you can use your credit card, if it costs you $3 to park downtown, and you pay $12 in Chicago for valet parking at a good place, or $35 in the garage, and you're going downtown, we get a lot of really good, exciting places to go downtown. I think that's a discussion worth having.
And, I mean, the trend in transportation management now is price according to demand and variable pricing. So it makes sense to look at the cutting edge trends nationwide and revenue
It
checks.
may not be this year. We'll watch.
No, but I mean, it's something that with the new technology is very easy to implement. So I think, and you guys are doing your analysis, that it makes sense to look at what other communities are doing with that.
Okay, yes.
It seems in my neighborhood that last summer and fall, we weren't enforcing the street sweeping regulations. And I know the 1600 block of Hinman got really dirty.
That's a public works issue, so if you,
1,600 on Hinman, and the other is we'll refer to public works.
right,
1,600 on Judson, Church Street in that area. There just didn't seem to be any enforcement.
you mean the cars weren't towed so that the street?
Well, they weren't ticketed.
They weren't ticketed?
That was because of the Davis Street construction,
Yes.
my understanding is.
Davis Street construction, there are a lot of waivers put out because you have to afford different people for them to park. So what happens, because of construction, you gotta send them someplace else, so waivers go out. Maybe the street cleaning regulations.
We did it during the long-range sewer plan as well.
So
Yeah.
if you see that, that's basically what it's tied to, construction, sewer plants, things like that. That's it.
So we'll confirm if that was the case.
Alderman Burris?
And then, did you send out a memo about when the meters on this would be 600, 700 block of Davis will be going up?
We're doing it,
It's right by Chase, in front of Coy.
we're doing it next week.
Fantastic.
Hold on, let me double check
There's
my
currently
notes.
a serious parking issue.
Oh, no.
The construction folks are scamming, well, they're
Well, they scam
scamming
the
the system where they're getting there at 6 a.m. and staying till 11 because we don't start checking until 9 for the 2 hours, so then they can stay till 11. And the merchants on that street are not pleased by that.
The week, beginning the third.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, let me raise one other thing. I'm sorry, regarding that, and that is, Ricky and I were talking about the 1600 block of Warrington, where employees, and I spent a long time standing out there on the street after there were complaints, but employees coming out and sticking their credit cards in the meters and parking it all day. I mean, it's a terrible problem.
Yes, Ricky?
You know, and I'm not making excuses, staff should be enforcing the 2 hour. The unfortunate thing is that the staff can't get to every 2 hour. They'll sit there and they'll go down with the LPR, they'll register the 2 hour or do it some other way. They'll get called off on an assignment and sometimes don't get back to pick up the chalk, and that's where the problem lies. We're still running into that system, but with the new technology, as Mr. Lyons said, there's got to be something somewhere. Once we do some more research into the technology and what the capabilities are, to be able to highlight that, identify it, and use it.
But it could end up the phone being a two-edger, that is, I got my meter through the phone, I went back out to try and go to 4 hours instead of 2, and it won't accept it because it's coming from the same source. And say, no, that's still you can't. And we went a little bit, if you recall, when we put the meters in, one of the things we looked at was whether we wanted to have the sensors, where the sensors would know when the car left or didn't leave. So if the car didn't leave, the meter actually says, sorry, you've got to get out of here so I can reset before I'll accept more time. And we didn't go that route. We haven't precluded ourselves from going that route, and we could do that down the road. The meters would accept the technology, meaning we'd do something in the right of way to install sensors so that you know that the car had come and gone. But I think that's just, we'll watch.
Remember, we thought that was a little too big brother-ish.
The thing that kind of add on to Mr. Lyons' statement, the technologies are advancing so fast that you no longer have to put it in the ground.
So maybe it won't be too.
There's little infrared signals now that can be mounted right on the meter that allows the car to wipe out. That's how fast the technologies are changing.
All right.
One last thing. but-
Okay, yeah, because we have the next meeting.
As the bike season arrives,
Yes.
June, July, something, I think we have to focus on where we have the bike paths with cars parking in the bike path. And you see it all the time, and I don't know whether it's people not used to it, but they like to get over by the curb. And then, of course, the bikes can't go by. And as we get more bike traffic, and a lot of people love bikes, love it, I think we need to look at that.
That's just an enforcement issue, so for anybody parking outside of the lines, if you will, that's an enforceable ticket. So if they're into the bike lane, that was a concern on the bus. If they're into the bike lane, that should be a violation.
And they have
Won't
to
the
write in.
stanchions be going back in soon?
I'm sorry.
Won't the little poles be going back in soon?
Oh, and
Yeah. Yes.
that delineate the bike lane from the...
As soon as there should be, they should be, I would say, I don't know, I'd have to check with Public Works, but I would think it's got to be within the next couple of weeks.
When the snow stops.
When the snow's
All right. Okay, everyone, we are getting close to our end time, or the converting to the next meeting time.
Can I just say something really quickly?
Oh, wait a minute.
Not that you-
Can I say something too?
Oh, yes, Jared. Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Sorry, Jared.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do something. I don't know, Mr. Lyons was kind enough to explain to me that it's an enforcement issue. We're gonna have to do something about the pickup and drop-off situation at our schools. The situation is so bad, I know at my school, that we have people, which is Walker School. There's an entrance to the parking lot where you go off of Church Street, just west of Central Park. People are lining up in the parking lot. They're blocking spaces that are open just so that they can, kind of zoom up and pick up their kid, even though their kid doesn't come out fast enough. People are lining up all the way out the parking lot into the left turn lane and just sitting there. And I think that if we have some sort of, I don't know what we can do, but if we have some sort of a deputizing to citizens or to parents that would be willing to do it, some training, I think that it can be enforced in a better manner. I don't know about all schools, but I know that my school would definitely have enough people that would be able to do it. It's ridiculously dangerous, and it's very arrogant of the parents to do what they're doing, to have their kids running in between cars when there are enough parking spaces. Now, of course, there's not enough parking space for everybody, but there's a solution to the problem. I don't know exactly what it is, and I don't know that it's an easy solution, but there's a solution to it, and there is a way to curb this behavior. And I think just like with everything else, when you start hitting people in the pocket, they'll start to understand. All that selective English and selective hearing will go away. I'm serious. It's not even funny the way that some people act.
Some situations are
It's
very bad.
ridiculous.
I mean, it's amazing how parents can endanger their children.
It is. And so I'd like for, at some point, if we can get that, talked about, and if we can get maybe the police in here so that they can let us know what we can and can't do as far as being able to write tickets or train to write tickets or something.
I would
That'd
hope
be great.
we might be able to use the technology and an ordinance change possibly where we can drive by, get the plates, not issue the ticket right then, but here's a picture, we're there, and then the ticket shows up in the mail.
I got a bunch of them on my phone right now.
But that's, because otherwise our people become a part of the congestion, writing the tickets right then. All of a sudden, someone's going to be there longer while they dispose of it, and that'll be a PR nightmare.
There's a
but-
certain degree of public shaming that's not too bad.
When Netco uses students with a little monitor belt on, and
To write tickets?
they hand out warnings to parents, and when they get the kids involved, they're being disciplined. It's more effective.
They got some info about that. What an opportunity.
Okay, everyone, we need to adjourn this and get ready for our joint meeting, which is down the hall. Okay? Do I have a motion to adjourn this?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.